Welcome to Dicta, your weekly dose of law school and bar exam info. I'm Kerriann.
And I'm Puyan, and we're the co-founders of Vinco. So today, we're going to discuss the top 5 ways to not annoy your law school professor. And we have a live professor here with us today, Professor Kerriann Stout.
I make him call me that.
So, there's one thing that annoyed me as a student, so I'm curious to see if it annoyed you as a professor, and that was class preparation. How do you feel about it when people come to class unprepared?
Just throwing up a softball there.
Yeah, just lobbing it over to you.
So clearly, it is really annoying to a professor when a student's unprepared for class. Of course, there's exceptions to this, right? Like,
yeah.
Shit happens. Like, I get that, right? I was a student, life happens, but it's about communicating that to your professor if there's a real reason. But if you just showed up unprepared, it's like, what are you doing? You're a law student. Like, this is your job. This is really important. It makes it seem like you don't care, and it's kind of unprofessional. And it wastes time.
Yeah. So one thing I did, and I'm curious to see if you would have preferred this as a professor, occasionally I had like a family emergency and I just wasn't prepared.
Yeah.
At the beginning, I was just so terrified of going to class unprepared that I would just skip the class in the off chance that I get cold called and made a fool of myself. But later on, I began thinking, why don't I just go and tell the professor ahead of time that I had an issue and I'm unprepared, and if possible, please do not pick on me this class.
Yeah. So this is very clearly like professor specific, but
Right.
I can tell you what I prefer. So I would certainly rather someone tell me what's happening in their life so that I know that they're not prepared, because I'm not trying to embarrass anyone. That's really not my style, and I don't want to call on someone who's not prepared. It, like I said, wastes time, and then that person's uncomfortable and everyone's uncomfortable. So I would like to know, and I would always rather a student be in class than not in class. Of course, like, you just have to be reasonable. This is what I tell my students. You know what an emergency is, right? So use your judgment and make sure that it really is an emergency, really is a reason that you can't do your homework or be in class. And also, if like your 8th grandparent dies over the course of the semester, chances are I'm going to pick up on the fact that you're taking advantage of that policy. So be reasonable.
So the first tip, I guess, is be prepared to the extent possible.
Be prepared to the extent that it's in your control.
Right. So one thing that as a student would also bother me is when people were called upon by a professor to, for example, summarize a case, and they just winged it. It was obviously they weren't prepared and they were faking it.
Yeah.
Would you rather them do that, or is there some alternative you would prefer?
No, if you're not prepared, don't try to fake it. Everyone's going to know. I mean, how can you fake it? Like, there's very specific facts, very specific things you're supposed to know about the case, and
But you could try to read it really quickly.
Yeah.
But
it's obvious.
Yeah,
because
totally.
then when there's any follow-up question that requires you to have any level of detail, you're not going to have it. And again, it's all about, you're wasting time. You're wasting my time. You're wasting your classmates' time. So again, I would rather someone tell me before class, even if I'm going to say, okay, that's not a real, like, valid reason, and I don't excuse the fact that you're unprepared, I'm still not going to call on you because it's a waste of time. So
absolutely.
Even if you're just like, I fell asleep, or even if it's not a valid excuse, I would rather just know, so I don't call on you and make a scene of it. Again, I had professors in law school who seemed to enjoy when that situation would come up in class.
Yeah.
So you really need to know your specific professor and their style, but that's not my style.
So if you pick on somebody, would you rather them tell you, I apologize, Professor Stout, I'm unprepared for this class?
Yes.
Or would you
That's
rather...
what I would rather.
Okay, so you would rather them do that than to give it their best effort?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
If they're just like, if they're prepared but very nervous, I want them to try, and I'll help them along with it. But if they straight up didn't read, just tell me that you didn't do the assignment. And, I might make a comment and poke at you a little for being unprepared, but certainly I'm not going to, like, embarrass you or make a huge deal out of it.
Right. Although some professors might.
Some professors might. It's true. I mean, I had been made to feel embarrassed by a professor in law school for being unprepared. Yes, I was occasionally unprepared in law school, so.
All right, so my next question, what about when there are classes that have some element of class participation. I mean, I think there was maybe one or two where if you participate, they'll add on like an extra point at the end of the year.
My class has an element of
right.
participation.
So some classes have that. But then there's always that guy or that girl who will raise their hand and ask a super shallow question just to ask the question, but they're not really prepared to take it any further. Like, how does that strike you when that happens in your classes?
So, I mean, right, we've all been in classes with students like that who just seem to be asking questions for the sake of asking questions.
Right.
That, I mean, is annoying, but even taking it a step further, what annoys me more than anything is students asking me questions multiple times that are things I've said 50 times, that I've sent out in writing in an email, that could easily be found by, checking our online portal.
Right.
Like, when it seems to me like a student isn't engaging in any kind of self-help before they're just like, oh, answer my question. It seems like they don't give any weight to my time. Like, they don't find my time to be valuable. Because I have 75 students this semester. So if every single student just completely acted like there was no place for them to get that information, I'd be spending all of my day answering the same question over and over again. So I find annoying.
You want them to do their due diligence before they ask the question.
And anyone who knows me knows I'm the most approachable professor at our law school, and I'm happy to engage in conversation and answer any questions you might have. But it does make me feel like you don't value my time, and like you're happy to waste my time if you don't try to find the answer yourself first.
Right. So I guess my next question is, after class, do you provide an opportunity for students to come speak with you for a few minutes?
Yeah, I always hang out after class in the classroom, and then I have office hours right after my classes. Mm-hmm. But certainly there are students who want to come up and ask questions and clarify things.
So when that happens, are there students who like monopolize your time and just take complete advantage of the opportunity to the detriment of other students who may want some of your time?
Yeah, I haven't encountered that as much as a professor, but I definitely encountered it as a law student.
Right,
so I know exactly what you're talking about.
Too.
And it might just be I don't teach a first year class, so the students aren't as like interested in making sure they have every little detail down the way they do their 1L year, you know what I mean? So, but you don't want to be that person who's monopolizing your professor's time. It's like, have some like awareness of what's going on around you. I just wanted to be like, do you see the rest of us standing here? It's not all about you or your question. So try to ask your question. If you don't understand the answer and there is a long line, thank your professor for their time and send a follow-up email. I think that's the best thing to do. But you definitely don't want to become known as the person who just doesn't get it, like doesn't get that their time isn't the only time that matters.
Or you could schedule a time to follow up with the professor during like office hours or something.
Yeah, there are definitely other ways to handle it so that everyone has the opportunity to take advantage of that time.
Yep. Okay, and the final question, even if you know you're right, should you press the point and fight with your professor in class?
So this
like you're 100% right and you know it and you researched it all night and you think your professor's wrong because they haven't researched the law for 10 years or they've just been teaching the wrong thing for 10 years or you have a good argument.
Are you trying to get me riled up right now because it's working? I have so many things to say on this nature. First, this was a new thing to me when I got to law school. I had never seen a student raise their voice at a professor in undergrad. That's not to say it never happens, but I had not encountered that at all. And then I came to law school and there were students yelling at professors and I was horrified. I wanted to crawl under my desk and like cry because that's not how I was taught to learn. Like, okay. So as an initial matter, I found the whole thing new,
disrespectful,
and just appalling.
Yeah.
Like I think it's really disrespectful. So if you disagree with something a professor's saying, first remember that professor is giving you a grade. Even if it's anonymous grading, you need to know the law according to your professor.
Right.
So I tell my students, you take the professor, not the subject matter.
Yeah.
Right. So you can be right until you turn blue in the face, but if what your professor expects you to write on the final exam is the way they're saying it, then
that's all that's relevant.
That's all that matters.
Yeah.
So that's a really important thing to keep in mind. The other thing is you might think you're right, and in your head, you might be right. However, you two may be saying the same thing in different ways. You might be having a breakdown in communication.
Yeah.
So be asked to clear up why they're two different things, but don't just assume that it's different and that you're right and your professor's wrong. So those are just some tips on, if you see that situation, how to handle it. About actually raising your voice and like arguing with your professor, it's so unprofessional. It's just so unprofessional.
So how would you feel about a student not raising their voice and instead taking the question, researching it, and sending like a well-articulated email with sources for their reasoning, and just having like an intellectual debate instead of raising voices and getting emotionally involved? Would you prefer that?
Yeah, of course, because that's acting like a lawyer. It's about, I think there's like a misconception about what it is to argue. And, often when we argue with like our parents or our significant others, we do raise our voices, and there's a volume element to arguing that doesn't exist in the legal field. If I disagree with a judge, which is, every day, I don't yell at the judge. I might really want to, but I have to improve the quality of my argument, and that needs to start in law school. Law students need to start to understand that if they don't agree with what the professor or someone's saying, raising their voice isn't going to help. They need to figure out how to communicate more persuasively. That's what we're here to do.
Yeah, so that's a good point. When I disagree with a judge, I would raise my objection or disagreement or my point orally, and the judge may dismiss it, as is frequently done. But then at that point, I would go back to my office and I would write a legal argument and then submit that with like some motion asking for whatever relief I'm requesting. Right. And if the judge still doesn't agree and I'm persuaded that the law is on my side, I'll just appeal it. I mean, that's what lawyers do. Yelling at that judge is just going to make him or her dislike you, and that dislike may carry over into an unfavorable outcome for you or your client.
Yeah, and I think learning how to do that as a law student is really important. Learning how to work the system of law school as a lawyer would, which is exactly as you're saying, articulate your argument to your professor. If that doesn't seem to work, follow up with the email. If that doesn't work and you think it's something that's worth going above their head for, then that professor has a boss. So just using the system to get the result you're looking for. And look, it might not turn out in your favor, but at least then you've kept your reputation in place, which is it's just so important.
Yep.
Thanks for asking me that one. I feel like it was a therapeutic moment for me.
So is there anything else you want to share, or did we cover it all?
I'm pretty sure we should end on that note.
Yeah, before you lose it.
Before things get out of hand here. So if you have any questions, or if you have a question about a behavior that maybe you're not sure would it annoy your professor or not, you can email me at kerriann@vincoprep.com.
Also the Facebook group.
Yeah.
Feel free to post it there.
Yeah, definitely. There are people who could benefit from it.